Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Dear students, welcome to the course of Information Security. Today we will discuss lecture number 14, and the main topic of the lecture is software security. So let's move on to the agenda. Dear students, in today's lecture, we will discuss first of all penetrate and patch approach, and then we will discuss software languages while finally, we will discuss some principles, or we can say some rules, if we want to develop a secure software. While in the next lecture, we will discuss the rest of the topics. So let's move on to the first topic, which is known as the penetrate and patch approach. Dear students, this approach is with respect to software security. If we want to examine the software security seriously, then we have to examine what happens if we take this inappropriate approach, which is known as the penetrate and patch approach. So let me explain this with the help of example that uh, why software security is not provided in terms of software because of this penetrate and patch approach. And this approach is taken by some major software vendors. Now, what is this penetrate and patch approach basically? It involves releasing a software which is developed, perhaps not been as thoroughly designed and tested. In this approach, dear students, what the software companies or what the software vendors do, they develop software uh, and they develop it while not considering the security thoroughly. So it's very important that if you need to develop a software, then from security perspective, it must be thoroughly designed and tested. But while in the penetrate and patch approach, this option is lack. The software vendors or the software companies, they don't thoroughly design and test the software. We are talking about the commercial software. Then what's the problem? If the security bugs come, or if there is any problem, then what these companies do, or these software companies do, they issue additional code which is known as a patch, and they instruct their customers to download this code from the internet, and they accordingly update the system to remove the security flaw discovered in the original code. So let me summarize the concept. In the penetrate and patch approach, what the software company do, they just develop the software, but they don't thoroughly design and test the software. And the problem is that if there is any security problem, or if there is any issue, that these companies release a patch, and they instruct their customer to download this patch accordingly and install it on their systems to remove the security flaw which is discovered in the original code. So this is the basic concept. Now here the question is that is releasing these patches for flawed software a bad idea? Answer is no. This is not a bad idea. Indeed, it's a good approach. If there are any bugs found in the commercial software, then indeed patch is a reasonable means of repairing the problems. However, here we are suggesting that this option should be the last resort fix. Instead, the software companies or the software developers, they should seriously consider the security during the software design process. That is relatively unlikely that regularly releases of such patches are needed. So it means that it's not a bad idea to release a patch for flawed software, but here it is recommended that software should be designed thoroughly, and they should be tested thoroughly with respect to security perspective, or we can say that security should be seriously considered from the beginning of the software development till the end, or throughout the software design process. So this is the recommendation. Now, another question is that do we mean that software vendors deliberately release insecure code? No, we are not saying that either. By penetrate and patch approach, we are suggesting that some software vendors, or we can say some software companies, they do not incorporate security sufficiently well into their original software design processes. And what could be the reason? The reason could be that maybe they are careless, or maybe for commercial reasons they want to get edge, or we can say as a haste to the market. Dear students, we know that we have different software companies, or we can say that there are different software companies and they are competitors with each other. So to get a market edge, maybe these software companies, they release softwares early in the market to get the market edge. That's why these companies, or these the software developers, they use this approach in order to get financial benefit from the market. This could be the one reason, or they may be careless. This could be the another reason. So finally, it says here that whatever the reason is, the result will be an insecure software if these companies or these developer they follow this approach. So that's why they will ultimately or finally require security patches for their customers. Now, dear students, another topic is the software language. So we just saw one of the design flaw previously. Basically, we are discussing that if we want to develop secure software, then what we have to do, and what are the approaches which lead to insecure software development. So we just saw one of the approach which is not recommended to develop a secure software from the scratch. Now another reason could be the software languages which the developer choose to code their programs. So it says here that part of the software design phase involves the selection of programming language. Now, dear students, it's very important being a programmer that we should know about the different programming languages, or we should recognize different programming languages, and accordingly we should recognize different properties or different features of these programming languages. Why? Because these features or these properties, they will in turn have significant security implications. So now we will discuss these languages one by one, and we will check that what could be the security implications. Now, dear students, the first language is the C language. It is developed by Dennis Ritchie at AT&T Bell Labs in 1972, and C language was used to write the Unix kernel. And it says that because of distribution with Unix, C was widely used in the 1980s and 1990s for commercial software. Now, it says that it also remains popular for operating system developers. The Windows NT kernel contains a mixture of C and C++. This is a little bit history of C and why or for which purpose C was used historically. But now, dear students, our focus is with respect to security. So there are main pitfalls, or we can say there are some pitfalls for the careless programmer. If you are not a professional programmer, or if there is a careless programmer, So C also has some pitfalls. And what are these pitfalls, or we can say disadvantages? The first disadvantage is that it is very easy to write a program that will compile. Okay, but this is not the end. It is harder to write a program that behaves as the programmer would expect. So, the problem is that hence C programs have a reputation for containing a lot of bugs and security holes. Dear students, focus on this point, that if you people use C language to develop your software, then bear in mind that C language contains a lot of bugs and security holes. And why is this? The reason is here. At the last point, the reason is that often due to flexibility and freedom provided to the programmer to change types or to manipulate memory addresses directly. Actually, programmer C language provides the programmer the flexibility, or we can say the freedom, to manipulate memory addresses directly, to deal with memory addresses directly, or to change types. That's why this disadvantage, or we can say this flexibility or this freedom, leads to insecure development. Now, it says that inexperienced programmers may value such freedom. It's good for them. Why? Because particularly they will improve efficiency or performance. But the problem is that this is a very short term view, and in the long term programming discipline, avoiding shortcuts is vital for robust code. So it says that if you look at for if we search for shortcuts while we are doing programming, then it's not good for robust code. So, dear students, now we know that what are the pitfalls of the C language. The next language is the C++, and we know that it is one of the most widely used object oriented language. And we can say that C++ is basically the extension of C language. C++ was developed by Bjarne Stroustrup, and it was developed by AT and in AT&T Bell Labs in 1986. With respect to usability, it says that it was widely used in 1990s for commercial applications, but this language was overtaken by Java, which is another object-oriented language, and nowadays it's very in the market. So, dear students, what is the problem with the C++ then? It says that C and C++ share many of the same problems with respect to security. So, what are these problems? The problem is that C or C++, these languages are not strongly typed. Now, what is it? What does it mean? What is the meaning of strongly typed? In the next slide, we will discuss this. But as far as C and C++ is concerned, these languages are not strongly typed languages. Another problem is that both of these languages, they place the responsibility of memory allocation and deallocation on the programmer. And memory allocation and memory deallocation is one of the fundamental problem, or we can say a feature that is notorious for causing programming errors. Basically, the memory allocation and the memory deallocation, this feature is mainly exploited by the attackers with respect to security. So, as previously we discussed that C and C++, both of these languages, they provide freedom and flexibility to programmers to directly manipulate the memory addresses. And this is the notorious error, or we can say this is the notorious feature which cause programming errors. Now, dear students, what do you mean by the strongly typed language? Actually, the strongly typed language is one in which variables are bound to specific data types, And if there is any mismatch in the expression, then it will result in type errors, regardless of when type checking occurs. Okay, so bear in mind that it doesn't have to do anything when type checking occurs, but when if there is a mismatch in the expression with respect to types, then the error will generate. So if we want an example of type strongly typed languages, then Python is a strongly typed language, as well as Java is the strongly typed language. Okay, now dear students, the next language is Java. We also said that a couple of minutes before, we said that Java is an object oriented language, and this language was developed by Sun Microsystems in mid 1990s. Now dear students, some of the features of Java language is that Java compiler generates an object file. We know that what we do, we provide source file, and then the Java compiler take this source file, compile it, and resultantly it provide the object file. Okay, now this can be executed on any processor supporting the Java runtime system. This object file, it can be executed on any processor which support the Java runtime system. Okay, now what's the object code actually? The object code, it consists of bytecode instructions designed to be both easy to interpret on any machine and easily translated into native machine code at load time. So, what's the picture actually? Let's say this is our source code. I am representing source code with S for the sake of simplicity. Java compiler take your source code and then it create the object file. Okay. So this object file is not executable file. Linker will take this object file and then it will make an executable file which is now ready for execution. So here this is the big picture. In this case, the Java object code, it will be easily translated into native machine code at load time. Okay, so we say that Java is a platform independent language. Why? Because all it need is JVM, Java Virtual Machine, or we can say Java Runtime System. So on any platform, if you have the JVM, the Java Virtual Machine or Java Runtime System, then this object file will be executed on that machine because of this JVM. That's why Java is platform independent language. Any operating system, if he has the JVM, then the object file will be executed on that machine. That's why it's called Java is a platform independent language. Now, dear students, here some of the features of the Java language. Java language is designed to enforce type safety. A couple of minutes before, we said that Java is a strongly typed language, which means that it provides type safety. Now, what do you mean by type safety? This means that programs are prevented from accessing memory in inappropriate ways. Now, dear students, this point is with respect to Java class and objects. We know that Java class defines both a set of objects and the operations that can be performed on the objects of that class. Now, with respect to type safety, it means that program cannot perform an operation on an object unless that operation is valid for that object. So this is the basic concept of type safety in Java. Now, dear students, the final point says that Java also supports the creation of virus-free and tamper-free systems with the code signing based on public key encryption. Now, dear students, code signing is another technique. Java also supports this mechanism, but I will not go into the detail of this. If you people are interested, then I would suggest that you should search the internet for this terminology, that what do you mean by code signing? So what does Java do? It actually sign the code for virus free and tamper free systems. But if you people are interested, then I would recommend that you should search this terminology on the internet. So this is the another feature of Java, and it is also a secure feature. So Java also provides security by using the code signing mechanism. Okay. Now, dear students, the another language is the C sharp. C sharp is nothing, but it was developed by Microsoft as an alternative to Java. It bears or it incorporates many of the features of Java, including type safety and code signing. So C sharp actually we can say that to give a competitive edge to Java, Microsoft they developed this alternative language, and as we said that it includes both the security features of Java. The first security feature is the type safety, and the second security feature is the code signing mechanism. And C sharp is a central part of Microsoft.NET framework. Now, dear students, these are the two design issues, security design issues. Uh, if you people want to develop a secure software, then you should bear in mind these security design issues. Okay. First of all, you have to avoid the penetrate and patch approach, being a professional developer. And secondly, you must know your choice of language. You must know about the different features of languages with respect to security, and then accordingly choose the language for your choice for your coding. Now, dear students, the next topic is the secure software principles. If we want to develop a secure software, then there are certain principles, or we can say that there are certain rules which we have to follow, or we can say we must follow. And if we follow these principles, these rules, then we will have a secure software design. So what are these rules? The first rule is secure software from the outset. What does it mean? It means that security considerations should be an integral part of software engineering life cycle, not an afterthought. Now, dear students, we know about the software engineering life cycle. We know that what we do in this cycle, first of all, we gather some requirements, and then what we do, requirements gathering, I am representing this with R. After requirements gathering, what we do, we design our software, and then we code our software, and finally we test our software. So this is the software engineering life cycle. Now, dear students, this point says that you have to keep the security in mind while you are designing your software from the scratch, from top to bottom. Or we can say that throughout this life cycle, security must be or should be an integral part to all over the design phase, to throughout this life cycle. Okay. So if we start from the requirements, if we think about security at this step, and then at the designing step, and then at the coding step, and finally at the testing step, so it means that now we are taking security seriously throughout this software life cycle development. So after this, your software will be a secure software. Now, dear students, here in the second point, it says that you should give security a high priority while designing your software. So it means that it should be in the first place. You have to give high priority to security while designing your software. So this is the first rule. The second rule says that secure software by simplicity. What does it mean? It means that there are two different ways in which security and simplicity of software need to be considered together. Okay, the first thing is that From a development perspective, your software should be simple and it should be easy to analyze and test. Now, what's the advantage with respect to security? The advantage is that if our software is simple to analyze, if our software is simple to test, then what's the advantage with respect to security? Advantage is that vulnerabilities will be discovered easily and they will be corrected easily if the software has a simple overall design. But if your software has a complex design, then it may not be, then the vulnerabilities in your software may not be discovered and corrected easily. But the final point says that unfortunately we have complex requirements, and that's why this requirement leads to rarely leads to simple software. Because of the complex requirements, our software are not that much simple, they are also complex. This is the unfortunate thing. Okay, now dear students, here it says that when a piece of software includes security features, then from usability point of view, these feature must appear to be simple. Why? Otherwise user will either ignore or avoid them. So or we can say at maximum, user will refuse to use software that has been over designed from security perspective. So let me summarize this point. It says that if we put too much security controls in the software development, then user they will get bored from these too much security controls and they will try to avoid these security controls, or they can at a maximum they can refuse to use the software. So that's why we have to trade off between security and usability. Okay, now dear students, the third rule says that secure software by least exposure. So it means that to ensure that software is not exposed to more risks than it needs to be. And how it will be possible? There are several different ways in which this principle can be followed. Number one, code that conducts security critical operations should be isolated into a separate modules or libraries. And what's the advantage if we separate security critical operations into a separate modules or libraries? The advantage is that it will be easy to analyze and control and restrict its impact on the rest of the software. So, dear students, the second point is that we can enforce the principle of least privilege, or it says that it should be strictly enforced. And what's the principle of least privilege? We already discussed this in detail in previous lecture, but let me summarize the point that it means that minimum access necessary to perform an operation should be granted and only for the time needed to complete it. Okay, so if we ensure this, then it means that we are ensuring the principle of least privilege. The third point is that the possible attack surface that code is exposed to should be kept to a minimum. But how? By turning off all functionality and services that are not required for the code to perform its designated tasks. Now, dear students, this example resembles with networks. If we maybe you are aware from the usage of modems, then in our modems they come with different functionality and services, and all of them are by default on. So you have to configure your modem to avoid any breach, any security breach. That's why you have to turn off the functionality and services which are not needed on the modem. Only you have to turn on the functionalities and services which are needed. Rest of the functionalities and services must have to be turned off if you people want to avoid any security breach. So this example is similar to the modem scenario. that you have to turn off all the functionalities and services which are not required by the code to perform its designated tasks. So by following these three points, we can least expose our software to the outside threats. Okay. Now, dear students, the fourth rule is the secure software by default. What does it mean? It means that this is an important security principle, and it says that software should fail securely. Now, what does it mean? Means that if the software fails, for example, encounters inappropriate input or loses a connection. If somebody provided an inappropriate input to the software, it should fail securely. Or if connection is lost, then it should also fail securely. Then what will be the advantage? Advantage is that this should not expose the system that the software is running on these security vulnerabilities. If our software doesn't fail securely, then it may expose our system to security vulnerabilities. Now, there are many examples of software vulnerabilities where this principle has not been followed. Or we can say, if you don't follow this principle, then what will be the consequences? So, on the next slide, there are two examples, and just focus on the consequences. For example, some of the softwares they generate a word readable core dump after a crash. For example, you have a software, and it's talking about some of the software. Some software they generate word readable core dump after a crash. Now, what's in this core dump? It may contain security critical information such as password entries. And when hacker get hold of this core dump, then he can easily compromise your passwords. Okay, so this is the first example. The second example is with respect to firewall that continues to operate when the disk it logs to becomes full. So what will be the problem? Problem will be it could lead to the failure to detect some important security critical event. So this is the second example where a second example of the secure software by default. So if our software do not fail securely, then here we just discussed two of the examples, then this could happen to ourselves, or these could be the consequences. So, dear students, this was all about today's lecture. Hope that you people will understand. Thank you so much.